I'm Calla Whitmore, 29, and last spring, my own grandmother handed me a check for $500 and told me to buy better soap. That was her version of a goodbye. I stood there, still smelling like welding oil, hands scraped raw from the night shift, right in the middle of her marble-floored foyer. The same foyer where Brandon's law school announcement got framed, where Samantha's residency photo hung like some family trophy. No photo of me, not even in the group shots. Evelyn made sure of that. In front of 30 relatives and 24 mimosas, she didn't whisper. She didn't pull me aside. She said it loud enough for the entire room to freeze. As of today, Calla is no longer part of this family. No one argued. No one even moved. By the time I stepped outside, the Boston wind hit harder than the humiliation. I opened the envelope on the bus ride home. $500, no note, no apology. Just her signature. That night, with grease still under my fingernails, I drafted the first page of my new blueprint. Not for a machine. For a future she couldn't erase. If you've ever been cut out of your own family story, if you've ever been told your work, your worth, wasn't enough. If you've stood in a room full of people who share your last name, but not your respect, hit like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Because today, I'm telling you exactly how I went from their afterthought to the headline they couldn't ignore. The moment I stepped onto the polished marble floor of Evelyn Whitmore's foyer, the hush swept over like a cold tide. Their gazes prickled against my skin. Sharp, assessing, amused. I had come straight from the shop floor, my navy work pants still holding the scent of welding oil, my hands scrubbed raw but not entirely clean. I hadn't planned to come. But Rosa, my cousin, had texted, "You should show up. Even if it's just to prove you still exist to them." I should have ignored that. The family gathered beneath cascading chandeliers, standing in clusters by granite countertops topped with mimosas and organic pastries. The Whitmores, sleek, polished, properly laminated in degrees and designer shoes. Brandon, the rising attorney. Samantha, the hospital star in her pastel coat. Their graduation photos gleamed from the mantel, flanked by Evelyn's curated floral arrangements. No photo of me. Not that I expected one. Evelyn turned just as I stepped further into the room. Her expression, frozen porcelain, eyes narrowing like she'd caught a cockroach under her heel. She didn't even wait for me to say hello. "Don't bring factory stench into my house," she said, loud enough to silence the room. Aunt Marina blinked, her mimosa halfway to her lips. Brandon raised an eyebrow and glanced away, pretending he hadn't heard. Samantha bit her lip, unsure whether to smile or frown. I froze. My palms itched, my chest tightened, but I didn't move. She stepped closer, the scent of peonies and power. "You were supposed to become someone, Calla. A name that meant something. Instead, you dig around boilers and grease engines." "I design systems," I said quietly. I said what I said. Her voice was glass. "And while you skipped Easter brunch last week for some plant duty, the rest of this family continued its legacy. I won't have you dragging us down. I didn't come here to—" "As of today," she cut in, addressing the room now, "Calla is no longer part of this family." No one gasped. No one objected. Just the sound of soft breaths, a shuffle of discomfort, and Rosa turning her face to the window. Samantha shifted uncomfortably. Brandon adjusted his cufflink. I should have shouted. Demanded to know why building engines was less honorable than pushing lawsuits or prescribing pills. But my throat sealed shut. Evelyn stepped forward, tugged a cream envelope from her clutch, and pressed it to my chest. "Go get yourself some classes," she said. "Or better soap." She tucked the envelope into my jacket pocket herself, then turned away like dismissing a hotel bellhop. I stood still for 1 second longer. Then 2. No one moved. I walked out. No one followed. Outside, the wind bit hard. My jacket, too thin for Boston's April chill, did nothing to stop it. But the cold was better than the burn behind my eyes. The envelope fluttered open on the bus ride. A check. $500. Signed, E. Whitmore. My hands shook, but not from sadness. From clarity. Before midnight, I typed the message and hit send. Thanks for the clarity. You won't see me again, and not until it matters. Machines don't lie. They break, they scream, they burn, but they never pretend to love you. It was past midnight, and the smell of steel and coolant had settled into my skin like a second identity. In the clattering heat of line 4, I adjusted my gloves and kept welding. Each hiss of metal to metal was oddly comforting. Precise, honest. Unlike people. The factory in Kent was a different world from Boston's polished brunch tables. Here, no one cared what your last name was. They only cared if you could keep up. I had traded the Whitmore name for a hard hat and badge number, and oddly, I preferred it that way. I lived in a dorm-style room behind the plant. Shared bathroom, vending machines instead of dining rooms. The mattress was thin, but the silence was thicker and peaceful. No Evelyn, no judgment, no past to trip over. On my second week, I caught Rosa Garvey crying in the locker room. She was in her 50s, calloused hands trembling as she folded her reflective vest. Her name was already off the schedule board. They said I don't adapt, she muttered, half to herself, that I can't keep up with the CAD interfaces. 30 years on machines, and this is how it ends. I remembered her, the only person who ever refilled the empty coffee pot without complaint. That night, during our break, I brought my tablet over. Do you want to learn? Rosa blinked at me. You? I nodded. We started slow. I drew wireframes, she traced them. I walked her through shortcut keys. Her fingers were stiff, her confidence thinner than her paycheck. But every night she stayed an hour later. I didn't say much, just watched, adjusted, let her figure it out her way. One afternoon, Lucas passed by, pausing when he saw us hunched over the work table. You teaching her CAD? She already knows most of it, I said. He looked at me for a beat too long. Huh. That was our first real exchange. A week later, the manager called us in. Rosa walked in with her chin high and a printed prototype of her design in her hand. I didn't go in with her. Didn't need to. 10 minutes later, she came out with mist in her eyes. She didn't say anything at first. Just walked up, wrapped her arms around me, tight, like she hadn't hugged anyone in years. No one ever stood up for me like that, she whispered. I stiffened at first, then let her hold on. That night, as I scrubbed oil from under my nails, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Lucas, if you ever build something of your own, I want in. The day my name landed on the Chronicle, I didn't feel pride. I felt like the silence was finally cracking. The newsroom smelled like burnt coffee and ink, humming with low voices and fast keystrokes. The journalist across from me, Mira, a sharp-eyed woman with ink-stained cuffs, clicked her pen 3 times before leaning in. You're not exactly talkative, she said, more amused than annoyed. But what you've built, this initiative, it's resonating. I shrugged, staring past her at the skyline beyond the window. Machines listen better than most people. I guess women in steel boots do too. She smiled. Let's start from the beginning. You're the founder of Factory Women Forward. Why? I hesitated. My instinct was silence. But Lucas had told me, gently last night, they can't respect what they never hear. So I gave her just enough. The seed of an idea born from night shifts, dorm rooms, and too many women being told they were slowing things down. I left out Boston. Left out Evelyn. I wasn't here to settle scores, just to break ceilings. The piece came out 2 days later under Human Power and Industry. Top feature, full photo, even my name in bold. Calla Whitmore. Not hidden behind another title. Not compared to a sibling. Just there. By noon, I had 17 emails. 3 were invitations, 1 from Stanford's Industrial Futures Conference. Another was from a factory owner in Michigan asking for guidance on starting a local mentorship program. A woman from Ohio wrote, "My daughter showed me your photo. I just wanted to say thank you." Lucas dropped a print copy on my desk with a smirk. "You didn't smile in this either." I let out a soft laugh. Some things don't change. By nightfall, I had an unread message from a Stanford faculty member. Subject line, "Keynote invitation approved." There was a line beneath it. "We believe your voice belongs on our main stage." I didn't cry, but I let myself close my eyes and breathe. Just for a second. 300 miles away, in a sleek corner office in Manhattan, Brandon tapped on his phone between meetings. A familiar last name caught his eye. He clicked, then paused, then read the whole article twice. He didn't say anything out loud, but he didn't archive the piece either. Instead, he forwarded it to Evelyn Whitmore. Subject, "Thought you'd want to see this." In her kitchen in Boston, Evelyn's phone buzzed. She opened the email and froze. "You know what hurts more than rejection? Being forgotten on purpose." Again. Lucas and I stood just outside the glowing glass entrance of Bellamy and Company, a place so polished it could blind you with its chandeliers. The valet didn't ask for our names. The guest list must have been airtight, or maybe we didn't look like we belonged. I looked down at my suit. Sharp lines, black silk shirt, clean boots. My hands didn't have grease tonight. Just a memory. I hadn't planned on coming here. But Rosa sent me the announcement flyer by accident, thinking I'd been invited. 40 years of Evelyn and Charles Whitmore. 100 guests, private slideshow, wine pairings, no Calla. The email had been circulating for weeks. I hadn't even warranted a regretfully omitted. We entered just as the lights dimmed inside and a video flickered to life across a 10-foot LED screen. Whitmore family through the years. There was Evelyn in her 20s, smiling on a yacht. Charles in his Harvard days. Samantha in her lab coat. Brandon in his suit outside a courthouse. Their lives in stills. Not a single photo of me. Not even the Christmas shot where I stood in the far corner. Evelyn spotted us before the reel finished. Her spine stiffened. She whispered to someone, then glanced toward the entrance. A man in a tailored black suit with a coiled earpiece started walking in our direction. "Security," Lucas murmured. I figured. I stepped forward calmly. The man stopped a few feet in front of me. "Ma'am, this is a private—" I handed him my card before he could finish. Calla Whitmore, CEO, Factory Women Forward. He blinked at it, unsure what to do next. "I won't be long," I said quietly, just paying my respects. Behind him, Evelyn's eyes narrowed like daggers. She didn't move from her table, though. Brandon started to rise. Instinctive, maybe, but Evelyn caught his arm. He sat back down, jaw clenched. Samantha stared into her wine. Lucas followed me as I moved closer to the center of the room. Every step echoed against marble floors and silence. I passed by the gift table, a thick folder with donation slips. I slipped a thin envelope beside them, the letter Lucas had typed earlier. Inside was a single sheet, a formal partnership proposal from the Factory Women Foundation, seeking high-profile sponsorship for an expansion fund. Signed, C. Whitmore, CEO. I said nothing. No accusations, no speeches, just presence, just contrast. Before we turned to leave, I dropped a handwritten note under Brandon's dessert plate, careful not to let anyone else see. "Don't worry, that was just the appetizer." Back outside, the air bit cold against my face. Lucas offered me his scarf. I didn't take it. That night, while I scrolled in bed, I noticed a new tag trending on social media. Whitmore erased. An anonymous post was climbing fast. They erased their own child from history. I was there. No photos, no name, just enough, and too much for them. If they won't listen to truth, I'll let the world watch it unfold. The studio lights weren't as harsh as I expected. Warm, even. They made the black backdrop behind the host's chair look theatrical. like truth was finally center stage. Across from me sat Danica Moore, host of Women Who Build, with a stack of note cards and a sharp smile. "Let's start from the beginning," she said. "Not your company, you." I took a breath. I was raised in a family that believed labor was beneath legacy, that some work made you small, that some women, especially those with calloused hands and factory boots, weren't worthy of their last name. Danica tilted her head, intrigued. "And now?" "Now I build machines that help people breathe clean air. I lead a team of 36 women across 5 states, and I sleep better than I did in silk sheets." She smiled. "You said something once in a closed interview that stuck with me. That grease stains don't hide, but some mothers do." I didn't flinch. That's still true. Back in Boston, Evelyn froze in her dressing room, halfway into a beaded gown for a charity gala. Brandon had texted her an hour ago. "Turn on Channel 12. Now." The screen on her vanity played a freeze frame of me, in a plain charcoal suit, speaking with deliberate calm. The chyron beneath read, "Calla Whitmore, CEO, Factory Women Forward." Her hand trembled as she reached for the remote. The interview played out smoothly. Then, just as Danica leaned in to wrap the segment, Lucas's final cut slipped in. Clean, quiet, undeniable. A 10-second clip. Evelyn standing near the entrance of Bellamy and Company, signaling to security with a flick of her wrist. Her voice caught on a waiter's lapel mic. "Remove her. She's not on the guest list. She's not one of us." The screen faded to black. Then Calla's business card appeared. In small print. "Let your guests know who you edited out." The internet did the rest. By midnight, Sir Whitmore Erased was trending again. This time with receipts. Clips of the interview, the surveillance footage. Side-by-sides of my name missing from family press releases. Thousands of comments piled in. This is what legacy families really do to women who don't follow the script. Imagine erasing your daughter from your own history. Publicly. Calla Whitmore, you're not erased. You're redefined. Whitmore Foundation's inbox crashed. 2 corporate sponsors announced withdrawals, citing ethics concerns. The gala Evelyn had dressed for was quietly canceled, but it was the article in Boston Ledger that broke the dam. Rejected, then exposed. How a family refused to fund their own daughter's clean energy initiative. Inside, the scan of my original proposal, time-stamped last year. Rejected by the Whitmore Foundation. With Evelyn's red pen across the top, "Never." The headline below it read, "Family Eugenics and Philanthropy? The Cost of Legacy Censorship." Lucas handed me a coffee that night. "Still quiet?" I smiled faintly, letting the world speak this time. He nodded and went back to adjusting the clip for international syndication. A ping broke the quiet. My phone. "Evelyn Whitmore. We need to talk, face to face. No greeting, no apology, just 6 words." I stared at it, then locked the screen. Let her wait. They said I didn't belong at their table, so I built my own and made it bigger. The conference room smelled faintly of sawdust and lavender oil, the scent Rosa used to rub on her wrists during long shifts. The table was custom-made, wide, simple, sturdy oak, no glass, no gold inlay, just the fingerprints of the women who built it. On the wall behind me, a black and white photo of our first team hung in a modest frame. Rosa sat in the center, her hands resting on blueprints I couldn't afford to print in color back then. Evelyn arrived 20 minutes early. She didn't knock. She walked in like she still owned air. Her heels clicked across the tile, but I didn't rise. I let her stand, searching for control she no longer had. "Calla," she said, soft like a question. "You look different." "I am," I replied, gesturing for her to sit. She didn't. "I came because all of this, got out of hand. The media spun it. You and I, we both know families have misunderstandings." I waited. No reply is sometimes more powerful than a rebuttal. She looked around the room. Her eyes paused on Rosa's picture, then on the hand-painted mission plaque near the exit, built by those who were told to stay silent. Evelyn straightened her coat. I think we should consider rebuilding the public image. As a family. Maybe a joint statement. You know, something healing. I handed her a newspaper I had placed on the table hours earlier. I'd marked one quote in yellow. This table was never built for them. It was built for us. Calla Whitmore, Factory Women Forward, May 2024. She stared at it, lips parting, not quite speaking, not quite breathing. You wanted a table with rules, I said evenly. I wanted one with room. She looked at me like she was seeing someone new, someone she hadn't designed. Maybe for the first time she realized she couldn't undo what she had erased. When she left, her perfume lingered longer than her apology. Outside the room, I stepped into the hallway. 24 women waited. Young, middle-aged, immigrants, single mothers, former welders, first-time builders. One by one, they stood with pens in hand, ready to sign contracts that would put them into jobs with health insurance and dignity. Some of them nodded as I passed. One whispered, "Thank you for making room." I smiled, more tired than triumphant. Later that evening, alone in my office, I opened my project notebook, the same one I'd started 2 years ago on a night bus out of Boston. I turned to the final page and wrote, "Today, I became her ghost, and her reckoning." Evelyn's perfume hit me before her voice did. The same scent she wore to every board meeting, every judgmental brunch, every birthday I wasn't invited to. She stood at the threshold of my office, eyes darting across the room like she didn't know what to be more offended by. The exposed brick, the grease-stained blueprints, or the framed photograph of Rosa, smiling proudly from behind a metal press. I expected something more polished, she said. I didn't respond. I just gestured toward the conference table. Long, oak, handmade by a dozen women who'd never been inside a college classroom. Each chair had a nameplate carved into it. None of them said Whitmore. She sat down anyway. "I'm not here to argue," she began. "I want to make peace. Publicly, if possible." Of course she did. "You mean, you want to manage the narrative?" She flinched. Just slightly. "Calla, I may have made mistakes, but I didn't mean to—" "To what?" I cut in. "Erase me from your family photos? Send me off with soap money? Or pretend I didn't build something you refuse to understand?" There was a time I would have shouted that. Now it came out quieter and sharper. She looked tired. Older. Her lipstick was perfect, but the corners of her mouth trembled with something she didn't want to name. Regret? Shame? Or just the fear of losing control? "I thought if you worked with your hands, you weren't aiming high enough," she admitted. I leaned forward. Turns out, hands can do more than point fingers. She didn't have a response to that. Instead, she opened her purse and pulled out a glossy envelope, the kind reserved for fundraisers and galas. On it, gold-embossed letters read, "The Whitmore Women Initiative, Bridging Legacies." "Perhaps we could find alignment," she said. "Your foundation could benefit from—" I laughed. Not bitterly, just honestly. I took the envelope, opened it, and slid a single newspaper clipping across the table. It was last month's front page. "From Greece to Growth, Calla Whitmore's Revolution in Women's Work." Below the headline was the photograph of our first graduating class, Rosa, 3 other women in welding masks, and me in the center. Behind us, that table. "This table," I said, tapping the image, "was never built for you." She stared at it for a long time, the silence growing louder with each second. Eventually, she stood. She didn't offer a hug. She didn't ask for another chance. She just nodded once. A gesture too practiced to mean anything. But as she reached the door, she turned back. "Calla, you know I'll have to answer for all this." "You already are," I said. And I didn't even have to raise my voice. She left. The room felt lighter. Not empty, just clearer. When I stepped into the hallway, there they were. Dozens of women. Some with babies on their hips, some with calloused fingers, some with eyes that said they never expected anyone to believe in them again. They stood in quiet rows, waiting for their turn to sign the contract, to join the next phase of the Factory Women Forward program. Lucas raised his camera quietly in the back, capturing the moment without a word. One of the women, younger than me, maybe 19, looked up and whispered, "You're the one who didn't give up." I smiled. "Neither will you." Then I walked back into my office, picked up my project notebook, and wrote with grease-stained hands. Today, I became her ghost and her reckoning. Some betrayals are loud. Mine was silent, stretched over years, wrapped in smiles and birthday cards that always arrived a day late. But the silence gave me something else. Space to rebuild, not just for myself, but for everyone they thought unworthy of a seat at their table. Because sometimes the most radical act is not revenge, it's replacement. Not screaming to be heard, but building something so undeniable that the world turns to listen. Like steel forged in quiet flame, truth took time, but it never bent. And when injustice is met with unwavering courage, the final verdict can echo through generations. Thank you for staying with me through this story, for listening, for feeling, for letting me share something that, for a long time, I wasn't sure I'd ever tell out loud. To anyone out there who's ever stood at the edge of a family gathering, looked around and realized there wasn't a single seat meant for you. To the people who got cropped out of photos, who got left off guest lists, who opened inboxes to find, "Sorry, we forgot," or worse, found nothing at all. I want you to know this. You are not a mistake. You are not a phase they outgrew. And you are not disposable. For years, I carried that belief that if I worked harder, earned more, stayed quieter, or became more acceptable, maybe they'd let me back in. Maybe they'd remember. Maybe they'd call. But here's the truth I learned. On factory floors, in late-night design sessions, in rooms where my last name opened more wounds than doors. You don't have to shrink, just to fit into spaces that were never built with you in mind. You don't have to soften your voice, just so it doesn't echo against their comfort. And you never, ever have to apologize for building something they never believed you could. Some of us grow up thinking that family means unconditional love, that blood guarantees belonging. But sometimes, family becomes the first barrier between who you are and who you're allowed to become. If you're still in that space, still standing on the sidelines of someone else's table, still hearing the echoes of words like, "You're not enough," "You're embarrassing us," "You're not one of us," I hope my story reminds you, you are not the problem. Their smallness doesn't shrink your worth. And being left out doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're free to choose something better. Maybe your table won't have crystal glasses or monogram napkins. Maybe it starts with takeout containers and foldable chairs. But what matters is who sits with you, who sees you, who claps for you when no one else is watching. And for the ones who doubted you, let them watch your silence turn into headlines. Let them see your quiet nights become blueprints for change. Let them sit with the weight of what they chose to miss. Because trust me, there's no sweeter sound than the one that comes after years of being dismissed. When the world finally says your name, and means it. If this story reached you, even a little, if you saw any part of yourself in these moments, if you've ever been told you didn't belong, I want you to leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me your version of the moment you knew. You couldn't keep waiting for their approval. And if you know someone who's still sitting in that silence, still wondering if their story matters, please share this with them. Let them know. They're not alone. I built my table from steel and second chances. You can build yours from whatever you have. Hope, grit, even just stubborn breath on a cold morning. But build it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying. And most of all, thank you for choosing yourself. We'll see each other again. And next time, I hope you're telling me about the table you built. I'm Avery Lancaster, 32, founder and CEO of Nexus Innovations. When the invitation for my father's 60th birthday arrived, I told myself maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe after building a tech company valued at $700 million. Maybe after creating over 400 jobs. Maybe after 8 years of clawing my way from the family failure to Forbes' one to watch. They'd finally see me. But that night, they gave me a seat, outside, next to the garbage bins. The smell of overripe roses mixed with champagne drifted from the tent where Seattle's elite toasted inside. I sat 20 feet away, at a folding table, with one paper napkin fluttering in the wind. Not a mistake. Not a seating error. A message, delivered with silver cutlery and curated indifference. And when my brother Brandon raised his glass for a toast, to the next generation of leadership, I realized exactly what I was to them. Background noise. But here's what they didn't know. While they laughed under chandeliers, my helicopter was already en route. Because sometimes, the most powerful statement isn't yelling. It's leaving, loudly. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, if you've ever sat in the corner and thought, one day, you'll all look up, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And when was the moment you finally stood up, quietly, powerfully, for yourself? Now, let me take you back to how this all began. The smell of overripe roses and smoked salmon wafted from the tent just ahead, clashing with the stench of the nearby trash bin beside my chair. I stood still for a second, heels sinking into the soft lawn, staring at the extra table set up 20 feet from the main event. A folding table, one gray plastic chair, and a single paper napkin fluttering in the breeze like a white flag of surrender. This wasn't a mistake.